Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Śrīla Gurudev Ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Maha-Bhagavat Śrīla Gorakshat Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Śrīmad. Sorry, let me start over. Śrīla Bhakti-Vigyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Śrīmad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Maha-Bhagavat Śrīla Gorakshat Maharaj Ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopala Patadas Raghunath Sharda Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshada Vrinda Ki Jai Namachaya Śrīla Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sarva Abhishta Bharata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund Ki Jai Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya Ki Jai Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. By mistake, I forgot to change the title. So it has yesterday's title on there. Anyhow, I prepared the title, I just forgot to add it. So I'll fix that afterwards. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha Guruve Gauradraya Radhikaya Itadalai Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarbhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Prabhantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Bhinedu Stang Sarva Bhuta Hridaya Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Shrinvatang Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridantasto Hyabadrani Vidhunoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayeshvabhadreshu Nityang Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tavaivasmi Na Jivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayamam Charanantikam Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshai Kshiptashtakama Ditarangamadhe Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dandavat Pranams Hari Priya Didi, Madhavi Didi, Rohit Radha Krishnan Ji, Indira Mataji, Prajumna Prabhu, Mantra Murti Mataji. And I wonder where Raseshwari Mataji is, and Manjari Didi. Alright, let me close this. Alright, so let's... Prajumna Prabhu, or Mantra Murti Mataji. Yeah, everything is great here in Navadip. Couldn't be better. The downfall of Saubhari Muni. So we read these first 4 parts of the chapter, and today we'll finish off this 5th part and then read the 7th chapter. So in this chapter, Shukadeva Goswami describes the descendants of Ikshvaku, another son of Vaivasvata Manu. So Ambarish Maharaj had 3 sons, Virupa, Ketuman, and Shambhu. So his eldest son, coming from then from his eldest son came Prishadashva, and from him came Ratitara. Ratitara had no sons. He requested sage Angira, who then begot sons through Ratitara's wife. These sons were born with Brahminical prowess, and they were known as being in the dynasty of Ratitara and also in the dynasty of Angira. When Vaivasvata Manu sneezed, Ikshvaku was born of Manu's nostrils. Okay, so now we're going back up to Vaivasvata Manu, right? Because right now we're going through all the descendants of Vaivasvata Manu. So now his next son, when he sneezed, Ikshvaku was born from his nostrils. Ikshvaku had 100 sons. 25 sons were kings on the western side of Aryavarta. Next 25 were kings on the eastern side of Aryavarta. Then the 3 prominent sons, Vikukshi, Nimi, and Dandaka, were kings in the middle area. And then he had other sons who were kings in the north and south. So now we're going to read about the first of his prominent sons, Vikukshi. Ikshvaku. When Maharaj Ikshvaku was performing his oblations to the forefathers, he ordered Vikukshi to go to the forest and bring some pure flesh. Vikukshi went to the forest and killed many animals, but he became fatigued and hungry. When he became fatigued and hungry, he ate a rabbit that he had killed. Vasishtha understood this and said the flesh was unfit for the Shad ceremony. Then King Ikshvaku became extremely angry and ordered Vikukshi to leave the country. Vikukshi. Then, instructed by sage Vasishtha about the absolute truth, Ikshvaku became renounced to achieve the supreme perfection after giving up his body. Thereafter, Vikukshi returned to the country and became the king of planet Earth and satisfied the supreme lord of sacrifices. Vikukshi became celebrated as Shashada, the eater of the rabbit. That's kind of horrible, isn't it? Like you're known by, that's your name for the big mistake you made. Anyways, the eater of the rabbits. Vikukshi's son was Puranjay, who was also called Indravaha or Kukutsta. He was called Jai because he conquered the city of the demons. He was called Indravaha because Indra became his bulwark in the war. He is called Kukutsta because he stood on the back of a bull. Once there was a war between the demigods and the demons. The demigods, being defeated, took the assistance of Puranjaya and conquered the demons. Puranjaya agreed to fight on the condition that Indra became his carrier. Indra first refused it out of shame, but when Lord Vishnu ordered him, he agreed and became the bull carrier of Puranjaya. Empowered by Lord Vishnu, Puranjaya fought with the demons by sitting on the hump of a bull. Thus he is known as Purukutsa. Puranjaya killed the demons with his blazing arrows in a fierce, hair-raising battle. As he sent the demons to the abode of death, the remaining demons fled away to save themselves. After conquering the enemies, saintly Puranjaya gave all the riches of the enemies to Indra. Then Puranjaya's dynasty goes this. Puranjaya, then Anena, Prithu, Vishwagandhi, Chandra, Yuvanashva, Shravatsa, Brihadashva, Kuvalayashva, and Kuvalayashva had 21,000 sons. Kuvalayashva killed the demon Dundu to satisfy the sage. He was thus cited as Dundumara, the killer of Dundu. In this fight, he was assisted by his 21,000 sons. All but 3 of them were burnt to ashes by the fire emanating from Dundu's mouth. The 3 surviving sons were Dridashva, Bilashva, and Bhadrashva. My God, it's pretty intense. 20,997 sons of his sons were just killed. Kuvalayashva's dynasty. So from Kuvalayashva came Dridashva, then Hariścandra, Nikumba, Bahulashva, Krishashva, Senajit, and Yuvanashva. Yuvanashva had no sons. Thus he retired from family life and went to the forest with his 100 wives. One second, okay. Then the story of Māndhātā. The sages in the forests became kind to King Yuvanashva, and they performed an Indra Yajna so that he might have a son. Being thirsty one night, Yuvanashva entered the sacrificial arena and drank the water meant drunk by his wife to beget a child. Later, the Brahmins saw the water pot empty and came to know about the king's act. They said, "Alas, the power of providence is the real power." In due course of time, a powerful son, Māndhātā, came from the lower right side of Yuvanashva's abdomen. The baby cried for breast milk. As the Brahmins wondered who was the child, Indra, who worshipped in the yajna, came and put his finger in the baby's mouth and said, "You may drink me." This is probably in return for Indra probably felt obliged because of how Puranjaya defeated all the demons. Being blessed by the Brahmins, Yuvanashva didn't die. After this incident, he prayed and achieved perfection in that very spot. My God, Yuvanashva didn't die. Because that must have been pretty intense for a man to give birth to a child. Yikes. Don't want to think about that too much. All right. Māndhātā caused fear in Ravana the rogues. Therefore, Indra gave him the name Trasadasyu, giver of fear to criminals. He was so powerful that he alone ruled the entire world consisting of 7 islands. Māndhātā worshipped Lord Vishnu through sacrifices and gave charity to the Brahmins. Scarifies? I'm sure that's supposed to say sacrifices. Lord Vishnu comprises all the demigods and the soul of all beings. He is non-different from sacrifice and its ingredients, hymns, rules, sponsor, priest, principles, place, time, and results. All places from where the sun rises to where the sun sets are known as the possession of King Māndhātā, who is residing in Mathura. So then Māndhātā and his wife Bindumati, who is the daughter of Shashabindu, she gave birth to 3 sons, Purukutsa, Ambarish, and Muchukunda. And we will read about them today in the next chapter, in chapter 7. Then he also gave birth to 50 daughters, who accepted Saubhari Muni as their husband. So that's what we're going to read about right now. Saubhari Muni marries Māndhātā's 50 daughters. Let's go there. What am I doing? Well, for some reason, this page isn't opening up, so I'm going to have to read it on here. Okay. Let's make this full page. How do I make this disappear? Hey. Hide sidebar. Hide binder there. Okay, and let's make this 200%. Yamunantar jale magnas tapyamana. Let me shut off the editing corrections. It says it's off though. Oh no, it doesn't say it's off. How do I shut off the... I don't even see the option for shutting off the... Anyways, whatever. Is that okay? Yamunantar jale magnas tapyamana param tapa nirvritam minarajasya drishtva maituna dharmina jataspriho nirpam vipra kanya me kamaya kanya me kamaya chata sopyaha griyatam brahmam kamam kanya swayambare. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And how do I take off the paragraph mark? Okay. One second, let me just make sure. My Wi-Fi isn't working. Hari, there you are. I say Shri Mataji, Dandavat Pranams, and Savitri Didi, and Rup Manjari Didi. Hare Krishna, everybody. Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question, Rup Manjari Didi. I wonder why Ikshvaku was doing a shraddha. All his ancestors should have been alive. Manu, Surya, Kashyapa, Marichi, Brahma. Yeah. So Bhari Rishi was engaged in austerity deep in the water of the river Yamuna when he saw a pair of fish engaged in sexual affairs. Thus he perceived the pleasure of sex life, and induced by this desire, he went to King Māndhātā and begged for one of the king's daughters. In response to this request, the king said, "O Brahman, any of my daughters may accept any husband according to her personal selection." Hey, why is it all centered? Did I accidentally center it all? Anyways. Okay. Oops. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This is the beginning of the story of Saubhari Rishi. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Māndhātā was the king of Mathura, and Saubhari Rishi was engaged in austerity while submerged deep within the river Yamuna. When the Rishi felt some sexual desire, he emerged from the water and went to King Māndhātā to ask for one of the king's daughters to become his wife. Savicintya priyam strinam jaratoham asanmata valipalita ejatka itteham pratyudahrita sadayushe tatatmanam surastrinam abhipsitam kim punar manujendranam iti vyavasita prabhu. Saubhari Muni thought, I am now feeble because of old age. My hair has become gray, my skin is slack, and my head always trembles. Besides, I'm a yogi. Therefore, women do not like me. Since the king has thus rejected me, I shall reform my body in such a way as to be desirable even to celestial women. What to speak of the daughters of worldly kings? Sorry, I just changed the font size. Okay. Muni praveshita kshatra kanyanta puram vridimat vritta saraja kanyabhir ekam pancha shatavara. Thereafter, when Saubhari Muni became quite a young and beautiful person, the messenger of the palace took him inside the residential quarters of the princesses, which were extremely opulent. All 50 princesses then accepted him as their husband, although he was only one man. Tasam kalirabur bhuyangs tararte pohyasohridam mama nurupo nayangva iti targata chetasam. Thereafter, the princesses, being attracted by Saubhari Muni, gave up their sisterly relationship and quarreled among themselves, each one of them contending, "This man is just suitable for me and not for you." In this way, there ensued a great disagreement. Sabhavrichastabir aparyaraniya tapashriya nagra parichadeshu griheshu nanopavana malambaha Sarasuso gandhikakananeshu maharhashayasana vastrabhushana snananukule pabhyavahara malyakai svalankrita stri purusheshu nityada remenukayar dijabhringavandishu. Because Saubhari Muni was expert in chanting mantras perfectly, his severe austerities resulted in an opulent home with garments, ornaments, properly dressed and decorated maidservants and manservants, and varieties of parks with clear water lakes and gardens. In the gardens, fragrant with varieties of flowers, birds chirped and bees hummed, surrounded by professional singers. Saubhari Muni's home was amply provided with valuable beds, seats, ornaments, and arrangements for bathing, and there were varieties of sandalwood creams, flower garlands, and palatable dishes. Thus surrounded by opulent paraphernalia, the Muni engaged in family affairs with his numerous wives. That's pretty opulent, just having like beautiful ponds with just professional singers standing around there to sing for you. Oops. Purport. Saubhari Rishi was a great yogi. Yogic perfection makes available 8 material opulences: Anima, Laghima, Mahima, Prapti, Prakamya, Ishitva, Vashitva, and Kamavasayita. Saubhari Muni exhibited super excellence in material enjoyment by dint of his yogic perfection. The word bhavricha means expert in chanting mantras. As material opulence can be achieved by ordinary material means, it can also be achieved by subtle means through mantras. By chanting mantras, Saubhari Muni arranged for material opulence, but this was not perfection in life. As will be seen, Saubhari Muni became very dissatisfied with material opulence and thus left everything and re-entered the forest and the Vanaprastha order and achieved final success. Those who are not Atma-tattvavit, who do not know the spiritual value of life, can be satisfied with external material opulences. But those who are Atma-tattvavit are not inspired by material opulence. This is the instruction we can derive from the life and activities of Saubhari Muni. Yadgarhastyam tu samviksha saptadvipavati pati vismitastam pamajahat sarvabhoma shriyanvitan. Oops. Māndhātā, the king of the entire world consisting of 7 islands, was struck with wonder when he saw the household opulence of Saubhari Muni. Thus he gave up his false prestige and his position as emperor of the world. Purport. Everyone is proud of his own position, but here was an astonishing experience in which the emperor of the entire world felt himself defeated in all details of material happiness by the opulence of Saubhari Muni. Evam griheshva virato vishayan vividai sukai sevamano na chatushyad ajastokar ivanala. In this way, Saubhari Muni enjoyed sense gratification in the material world, but he was not at all satisfied, just as a fire never ceases blazing. Just as if, oh, this is an important shloka. So the fire never becomes satisfied, just as a fire never ceases blazing if constantly supplied with drops of fat. Of fat? I thought it was supposed to be ghee. Ajastokai. Okay. I don't know what that means. Purport. Material desire is just like a blazing fire. If a fire is continually supplied with drops of fat, the fire will increase more and more and never be extinguished. Therefore, the policy of trying to satisfy material desires by catering to one's material demands will never be successful. In modern civilization, everyone is engaged in economic development, which is another way of constantly dropping fat into the material fire. The Western countries have reached the summit of material civilization, but people are still dissatisfied. Real satisfaction is Krishna consciousness. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 5.29, where Krishna says, Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantam richati. The sages, knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attained peace from the pangs of material miseries. One must therefore take to Krishna consciousness and advance in Krishna consciousness by properly following the regulative principles. Then one can attain an eternal blissful life in peace and knowledge. Yeah, I mean, I very much see that when if I'm craving something, I'm craving some chocolate. If I eat the chocolate, and like if I go out and get some chocolate, it doesn't just satisfy my craving and then I don't want chocolate anymore. Then I want chocolate all the time. The desire to enjoy increases more the more you enjoy. Sakadachirupasina atma panavamatmana dadarsha pavricharyo mina sangha samuttitam. Let me just check to make sure the, okay, it looks like the connection's okay. I'm on my mobile. Haribo, Kishore Prabhu. I'm using my mobile data right now. And Gargaraji, Dandavat Pranam. Thereafter, one day while Saubhari Muni, who was expert in chanting the mantras, was sitting in a secluded place, he thought to himself about the cause of his fall down, which was simply that he had associated himself with the sexual affairs of the fish. I thought the cause of his fall down was his cursing Garuda. Purport. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that Saubhari Muni had fallen from his austerity because of Vaishnav Aparad. Okay. The history is that when Garuda wanted to eat fish, Saubhari Muni unnecessarily gave the fish shelter under his care. Because Garuda's plans for eating were disappointed, Saubhari Muni certainly committed a great offense to a Vaishnav. Because of this Vaishnava Aparad, an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnav, Saubhari Muni fell from his exalted position of mystic tapasya. One should not, therefore, impede the activities of a Vaishnav. This is a lesson we must learn from this incident concerning Saubhari Muni. He didn't just hide the fish from Garuda, but he cursed Garuda. Right? He cursed Garuda that he could never come to that. I forgot what the curse was exactly, but if he came to that area to eat fish, something would happen to Garuda. He would die, or I don't know what, but something really intense. So so Garuda was cursed not to come to that area, and so then Garuda never came there again to eat fish, and that place is Kaliya Hrad, right? Because then Kaliya went there, because Kaliya was afraid of Garuda, but that was one place where Garuda couldn't get him. So that's how the whole Kaliya Hrad story started. Aho imam pashyata me vinasham tapasvina satcharita vratasya antarjale vari chara prasangat prachavitam brahmachiradritam yat. Alas, while practicing austerity, even within the depths of the water, and while observing all the rules and regulations practiced by saintly persons, I lost the results of my long austerity simply by associating with the sexual affairs of fish. Everyone should observe this fall down and learn from it. Sangam tyajeta mituna vratinam mumukshu sarvatmana visrijed bahirindriyani ekashcharandra hasi chittamananta ishe yunji tatar vratishu sadushu chet prasanga. Sorry, I did the wrong meter. This is Brahma Samhita meter. A person desiring liberation from material bondage must give up the association of persons interested in sex life and should not employ his senses externally in seeing, hearing, talking, walking, and so on. Shivananru, class Sorry. A person desiring liberation from material bondage must give up the association of persons interested in sex life and should not employ his senses externally in seeing, hearing, talking, walking, and so on. One should always stay in a secluded place, completely fixing his mind at the lotus feet of the unlimited personality of Godhead. And if one wants any association at all, he should associate with persons similarly engaged. Sorry about that, guys. Purport. Saubhari Muni, giving conclusions derived from his practical experience, instructs us that persons interested in crossing to the other side of the material ocean must give up the association of persons interested in sex life and accumulating money. This is also advised by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Niskinchanasya bhagavad bhajanonmukasya param param jigamishwar Bhavasagarasya sandarshanam vishayinam atayoshitam cha ha hanta hanta vishabhaksha nato pyasadu. That's from Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natak 8:27. Alas, for a person seriously desiring to cross the material ocean and engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord without material motives, Seeing a materialist engaged in sense gratification and seeing a woman who is similarly interested is more abominable than drinking poison willingly. One who desires complete freedom from material bondage can engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He must not associate with Vishai, materialistic persons of those interested in sex life. Every materialist is interested in sex. Thus, in plain language, it is advised that an exalted saintly can avoid the association of those who are materially inclined. Srila Das Thakur also recommends that one engage in the service of the acharyas, and if one wants to live in an association, he must live in the association of devotees. Tader Charanasevi Bhakta Sanevas. The Krishna consciousness movement is creating many centers just to create devotees, so that by associating with the members of such a center, people will automatically become uninterested in material affairs. Although this is an ambitious proposal, this association is proving effective by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gradually associating with the members of the Krishna consciousness movement, simply taking prasad and taking part in chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, ordinary persons are being considerably elevated. Saubhari Muni regrets that he had bad association even in the deepest part of the water. Because of the bad association of the sexually engaged fish, he fell down. A secluded place is also not secure unless there is good association. Ekastapasvaham atam bhasi, Ekastapasvaham atam bhasi matsya sangat panchashara samuta pancha sahasra sarga nantam vrajamya ubhaya kritya manorattanam whatever maya gunarhitamatir vishayirtha bhava nantam vrajamya ubhaya manorattanam. Sorry, I messed up with that one. In the beginning, I was alone and engaged in performing the austerities of mystic yoga. But later, because of the association of fish engaged in sex, I desired to marry. Then I became the husband of 50 wives, and in each of them I begot 100 sons, and thus my family increased to 5,000 members. By the influence of the modes of material nature, I became fallen and thought that I would be happy in material life. Thus, there is no end to my material desires for enjoyment, and this life and the next. Evam vasam grihe kalam viraktana samastita vanam jagamanuyayus tatpatnya patidevataha. In this way, he passed his life in household affairs for some time, but then he became detached from material enjoyment. To renounce material association, he accepted the Vanaprastha order and went to the forest. His devoted wives followed him, for they had no shelter other than their husband. Tatra taptva tapas iktikshnam atmadarshanam atmavan sahaivagni atmanam Yayuja Paramatmani. When Saubhari Muni, who is quite conversant with the self, went to the forest, he performed severe penances. In this way, in a fire at the time of death, he ultimately engaged himself in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. At the time of death, fire burns the gross body, and if there is no more desire for material enjoyment, the subtle body is also ended. And in this way, a pure soul remains. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Takta Deham Punar Janma Naiti. If one is free from the bondage of both the gross and subtle material bodies and remains a pure soul, he returns home back to Godhead to be engaged in the service of the Lord. Takta Deha Punar Janma Naiti Mam Eti. He goes back home, back to Godhead. Thus it appears that Saubhari Muni attains that perfect stage. Tasvapatyur Maharaja nirikshadyatmikam gatim anviyustat prabhavena agnim shantam ivarchisha. O Maharaj Parikshit, by husbands progressing in spiritual existence, Saubhari Muni's wives were also able to enter the spiritual world by his spiritual power, just as the flames of a fire cease when the fire is extinguished. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:32, Suryo Vaishyas Tata Shudras Tepi Yanti Param Gatim. Women are not considered very powerful in following spiritual principles, but a woman is fortunate enough to get a suitable husband who is spiritually advanced. If a woman is fortunate to get a husband who is spiritually advanced, and if she always engages in his service, she also gets the same benefits as her husband. Here it is clearly said that the wives of Saubhari Muni also entered the spiritual world by the influence of their husband. They were unfit, but because they were faithful followers of their husband, they also entered the spiritual world with him. Thus, a woman should be a faithful servant of her husband, and if the husband is spiritually advanced, the woman will automatically get opportunity to enter the spiritual world. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 9th canto, 6th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled "The Downfall of Saubhari Muni." What we see, though, usually is that the wife is usually the devotional one. At least that's how it is here in India. In all the temples, it's all filled with all the housewives, and they all come and do service for the temple, go for the classes and kirtans. It's full. The temple's full of housewives and not very many husbands. Chapter 7: The Descendants of King Māndhātā. So this is a very short chapter. What time is it? It's 8:13. Let's see if we can finish this. In this chapter, the descendants of King Māndhātā are described, and in this connection, the histories of Purukutsa and Hariścandra are also given. The most prominent son of Māndhātā was Ambarish. His son was Yovanashva, and Yovanashva's son was Harita. These three personalities were the best in the dynasty of Māndhātā. Purukutsa, another son of Māndhātā, married the sister of the snakes, Sarpagan, named Narmada. The son of Purukutsa was Trasadasyu, whose son was Anaranya. Anaranya's son was Haryashva. Haryashva's son was Praruna. Praruna's son was Tribhandana, and Tribhandana's son was Satarvat, also known as Triśaṅku. When Triśaṅku kidnapped the daughter of a Brahmin, his father cursed him for the sinful act, and Triśaṅku became a Chas and a Shudra. Later, by the influence of Mitra, he was brought to the heavenly planets, but by the influence of the demigods, he fell back downward. He was stopped in his fall, however, by the influence of Vishvamitra. The son of Triśaṅku was Hariścandra. Hariścandra once performed a Rajasuya Yagya, but Vishvamitra cunningly took all of Hariścandra's possessions as Dakshina contribution and chastised Hariścandra in various ways. Because of this, a quarrel arose between Vishvamitra and Vashishta. Hariścandra had no sons, but on the advice of Narad, he worshipped Varuna and in this way got a son named Rohita. Hariścandra promised that Rohita would be used to perform a Varuna Yagya. Varuna reminded Hariścandra repeatedly about this yagya, but the king, because of affection for his son, gave various arguments to avoid sacrificing him. Thus time passed, and gradually the son grew up. To safeguard his life, the boy bow and arrows in hand and went to the forest. Meanwhile, at home, Hariścandra suffered from dropsy because of an attack from Varuna. I don't know what dropsy is. What the heck? Why did my computer freak out? When Rohita received the news that his father was suffering, my God. So when Rohita received the news that his father was suffering, he wanted to return to the capital, but King Indra prevented him from doing so. Following the instructions of Indra, Rohita lived in the forest for 6 years and then returned home. Rohita purchased Shunashepa, the second son of Ajigartha, and gave him to his father Hariścandra as a sacrificial animal. In this way, the sacrifice was performed. Varuna and the other demigods were pacified. Chandra was freed from disease. Okay. In this sacrifice, Vishwamitra was the Hotapris, Jamadagni was the Advaryu, Vishishta was the Brahma, and Ayasya was the Udgata. King Indra, being very satisfied by the sacrifice, gave Hariścandra a golden chariot, and Vishwamitra gave him a transcendental knowledge. Thus, Shukadeva Goswami describes how Hariścandra achieves perfection. Alright, so Shri Shuka Uvacha Māndhātā putra pravaro yom parisha prakirtita pitamahena pravrito yovanashvastu tatsutaha haritastasya putro bhun Māndhātri pravara ime. One second, just checking the comments. Everything seems to be going okay. Right. Shukadeva Goswami said, the most prominent among the sons of Māndhātā was he who is celebrated as Ambarish. Ambarish was accepted as son by his grandfather, Yuvanashva. Ambarish's son was Yovanashva, and Yovanashva's son was Harita. In Māndhātā's dynasty, Ambarish, Harita, and Yovanashva were very prominent. Narmada bhartribhir datta purukutsayayo ragai taya rasatalam nito bhujagendra prayuktaya. The serpent brothers of Narmada gave Narmada to Purukutsa. Being sent by Vasuki, she took Purukutsa to the lower region of the universe. Purport. Before describing the descendants of Purukutsa, the son of Māndhātā, Shukadeva Goswami first describes how Purukutsa was married to Narmada, who was induced to take him to the lower region of the universe. To the lower region of the universe. Gandharvam avadhit tatra vadhyam vai Vishnu Shakti dhrik nagalabda vara sarpad abhayam smaratang idam. There in Rasatala, the lower region of the universe, Purukutsa, being empowered by Lord Vishnu, was able to kill all the Gandharvas who deserved to be killed. Purukutsa received the benediction from the serpents that anyone who remembers this history of being brought by Narmada to the lower region of the universe will be assured of safety from the attack of snakes. Cool. Trasadasyo Purukutso Yonaranyasya dehakrit haryashastvat sutastasmat prarunota tribandhana. The son of Purukutsa was Trasadasyu, who was the father of Anaranya. Anaranya's son was Haryashva, the father of Praruna. Praruna was the father of Tribanda. Tasya satyavrata putras Triśaṅkur iti vishruta praptas chandalatam shapad guru koshika tejasa sashariro gata swargam adyapi dividrishyate patito vakshira devais tenaiva stambito balat. The son of Tribandana was Satyavrat, who is celebrated by the name Triśaṅku. Because he kidnapped the daughter of a Brahmin when she was being married, his father cursed him to become a Chandal, lower than a Shudra. Thereafter, by the influence of Vishwamitra, he went to the higher planetary system, the heavenly planets, and his material body. But because of the prowess of the demigods, he fell back downward. Nonetheless, by the power of Vishwamitra, he did not fall all the way down. Even today, he can still be seen hanging in the sky, head downward. My God. Triśaṅkavo Hariścandra Vishvamitra Vasishtayo Yan Nimittam Abhuryudham Pakshi Nor Bahuvarshikam. The son of Triśaṅku was Hariścandra. Because of Hariścandra, there was a quarrel between Vishvamitra and Vasishta, who for many years fought one another, having been transformed into birds. Why were they transformed into birds? Vishvamitra and Vasishta were always inimical. Formerly, Vishvamitra was a Kshatriya, and by undergoing severe austerities, he wanted to become a Brahmin, but Vasishta would not agree to accept him. In this way, there was always disagreements between the two. Later, however, Vasishta accepted him because of Vishvamitra's quality of forgiveness. Once, Hariścandra performed a yajna for which Vishvamitra was the priest, but Vishvamitra, being angry at Hariścandra, took away all his possessions, claiming them as a contribution of dakshina. Vasishta, however, did not like this, and therefore a fight arose between Vasishta and Vishvamitra. The fighting became so severe that each of them cursed the other. One of them said, "May you become a bird," and the other said, "May you become a duck." Thus both of them became birds and continued fighting for many years because of Hariścandra. We can see that such a great mystic yogi as Saubhari became a victim of sense gratification, and such great sages as Vasishta and Vishvamitra became birds. This is the material world. Abrahma bhuvana loka punar avatrino. Within this material world, or within this universe, however elevated one may be in material qualities, one must suffer the conditions of birth, death, old age, and disease. Janma mritu jara vyadi. Therefore, Krishna says that this material world is simply miserable. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. The Bhagavad Gita says, "Padam padam yad vipadam." At every step here, there is danger. Therefore, because the Krishna consciousness movement provides the opportunity for the human being to get out of this material world simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, this movement is the greatest benediction in human society. That'd be kind of funny to see the duck and bird fighting. So napatyo vishanatma naradasyo padeshata varunam sharanam yata putra me jayatam prabho. Hariścandra had no son and was therefore extremely morose. Once, therefore, following the advice of Narad, he took shelter of Varuna and said to him, "My lord, I have no son. Would you kindly give me one?" Yadiviro maharaja tenaiva tam yaje iti tateti varunenasya putra jatasturohita. O King Parikshit, Hariścandra begged Varuna, "My lord, if a son is born to me, with that son I shall perform a sacrifice for your satisfaction." When Hariścandra said this, Varuna replied, "Let it be so." Because of Varuna's benediction, Hariścandra begot a son named Rohita. Jata suto hanenanga mam yajasveti so bravrit yada pashur nirdashasyad attamedho bhavediti. Thereafter, when the child was born, Varuna approached Hariścandra and said, "Now you have a son. With this son, you can offer me a sacrifice." In answer to this, Hariścandra said, "After 10 days have passed since an animal's birth, the animal becomes fit to be sacrificed." Nirdashe cha saagatya yajasvetya haso bravit danta pashor yajayeran attamedho bhavediti. After 10 days, Varuna came again and said to Hariścandra, Now you can perform the sacrifice. Hariścandra replied, when an animal grows teeth, then it becomes pure enough to be sacrificed. Why would Hariścandra ask for that in the first place? Anyways, Danta jata yajasveti sapratyahataso bravit yada. Yada patanta sa danta atamedho bhaveriti. Why would he promise to sacrifice his son? If he wanted his son so bad. When the teeth grew, Varuna came and saw Hariścandra. Now the animal has grown teeth, and you can perform the sacrifice. Hariścandra replied, when all its teeth have fallen out, then it will be fit for sacrifice. Pashar nipatitantaya jasvetahaso bravit yada pasho punardanta jayante ta pashu shuchi. When the teeth had fallen out, Varuna returned and said to Hariścandra, now the animal's teeth have fallen out, and you can perform the sacrifice. But Hariścandra replied, when the animal's teeth grow in again, then he'll be pure enough to be sacrificed. Punarjata yajasveti sapratyahataso bravit sanahiko yada rajanyota pashu shuchi. How long is this going to go on for? When the teeth grew in again, Varuna came and said to Hariścandra, now you can perform the sacrifice. But Hariścandra then said, O king, when the sacrificial animal becomes a kshatriya and is able to shield himself to fight with the enemy, then he'll be purified. Iti putranuragena sneha yantri tachetasa kanchayatam tang tam to devas tamaikshata. Hariścandra was certainly very much attached to his son. Because of this affection, he asked the demigod Varuna to wait. Thus Varuna waited and waited for the time to come. Rohitastara bhigyaya pitu karma chikirshitam prana prepsur tanushpanir aranyam pratyapadyata. Rohita could understand that his father intended to offer him as the animal for sacrifice. Therefore, just to save himself from death, he equipped himself with bow and arrows and went to the forest. Pitaram varunagrastam shrutva jata mahodaram rohito gramameyaya tam indraha pratyashedataha. When Rohita heard that his father had been attacked by dropsy due to Varuna and that his abdomen had grown very large, he wanted to return to the capital, but King Indra forbade him to do so. Bhume paryatanam punyam tirtakshetra nishevanai rohitaya dishachakra sopyaranye vasatsamam. King Indra advised Rohita to travel to different pilgrimage sites and holy places, for such activities are pious indeed. Following this instruction, Rohita went to the forest for 1 year. Evam dvitiye tritiye chaturte panchame tata abhyetastaviro vipro bhutva hadvrit. In this way, at the end of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th years, Rohita wanted to return to his capital. The king of heaven, Indra, approached him as an old Brahmin and forbade him to return, repeating the same words as in the previous year. Sham samvatsaram tatram charitva rohita purim upavrajan ajigartad akrinam madhyamam sutam shunashepam pashum pitre pradaya samavandata. Thereafter, in the 6th year, after wandering in the forest, Rohita returned to the capital of his father. He purchased from Ajigartha a second son named Shunashepa. When he offered Shunashepa to his father, Then he offered Shunashepa to his father, Hariścandra, to be used as a sacrificial animal and offered Hariścandra his respectful obeisances. That is not cool, man. Purport. It appears that in those days, a man could be purchased for any purpose. Hariścandra, that's so horrible. Hariścandra was in need of a person to sacrifice as the animal in a yajna, and thus fulfill his promise to Varuna. And the man was purchased from another man for this purpose. Millions of years ago, animal sacrifice and slave trade both existed. Indeed, they have existed time immemorial. Oh God, okay. Tata Purusha Medhena Hariścandra Mahayasha Muktadaro Yaja Devam Varunadim Mahatkata. Maybe I like being in Kali Yuga. I wouldn't want to be sold to be sacrificed by my father. Thereafter, the famous king Hariścandra, one of the exalted persons in history, performed grand sacrifices by sacrificing a man and pleased all the demigods. In this way, his dropsy created by Varuna was cured. Vishvamitra bhavatasmin hota chadvar yuratmavan Jamadagnir abudma Vashishta yasya samaga. In that great human sacrifice, Vishvamitra was the chief priest to offer oblations. The perfectly self-realized Jamadagni had the responsibility for chanting the mantras from the Yajurveda. Vashishta was the chief Brahminical priest, and the sage Ayasya was the reciter of the hymns of the Samaveda. Tasmai tushto dadavindra shatakom bhamyam shatakom bhamayam ratam, whatever. Shunashepasya mahatmyam uparishtat prachakshyate. Sorry, I'm going over time, guys. I'm almost finished. King Indra, being very pleased with Hariścandra, offered him a gift of a golden chariot. Shunashepa's glories will be presented along with a description of the son of Vishvamitra. Satyam saram dhritim drishtva sabarasya chabhupate Vishvamitra brisham prito dadav avihatam gatim. The great sage Vishvamitra saw that Maharaj Hariścandra, along with his wife, was truthful, forbearing, concerned with the essence. Thus, he gave him imperishable knowledge for the fulfillment of the human mission. Mana pritiyam tam adbhis tejasapo nilena tat kevayam dharayang tacha bhutado tam mahatmani tasmin jnana kalam dhyatva taya jnanam vinirdahan Hitvatam svena bhavena nirvana sukha samvida anirdeshar pratarkena tasto vidvasta bandhana. Maharaj Hariścandra first purified his mind, which was full of material enjoyment, by amalgamating it with the earth. Then he amalgamated the earth with the water with fire, the fire with the air, and the air with the sky. Thereafter, he amalgamated the sky with the total material energy, and the total material energy with spiritual knowledge. This spiritual knowledge is realization of oneself as part of the Supreme Lord. When the realized spiritual soul is engaged in the service of the Lord, he is eternally imperceptible and inconceivable. Thus established in spiritual knowledge, he is completely freed from material bondage. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 9th canto, 7th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled The Descendants of King Māndhātā. My God, we are 6 minutes over time. Let's see, what are we reading tomorrow? Tomorrow we'll read... No, we already read this. Tomorrow we will read The sons of Sagar meet Lord Kapila Dev. Alright. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharva Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki jai, Shri Nath Madan Mohan Ju ki jai, Nitil Pravishram Shatara Shatashmar Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Guru Dev ki jai, Nitil Pravishram Vishnupad Shatara Shatashmar Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Nitil Pravishram Vishnupad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitil Pravishram Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Nitil Pravishram Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai, Nitil Pravishra Mahabhagavat Srila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai, Nitil Pravishra Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai, Nitil Pravishra Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai, Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai, Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shar Gosai Prabhu ki jai, Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai, Namachai Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Sarva Abhishta Padatta Giri Raj Maharaj ki jai, Shri Radha Kund Shama Kuni Munanga Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Om Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashaja Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavataya Namo Namaha Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vajapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams everybody. See you all tomorrow. Sorry for going so far over time today. 10 minutes over time, my God. All right, Haribol.